listen, never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Get on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
There's absolutely no human being on the planet I'd rather be talking to more than Robert Stock right now.
Oh, thank you. It's the same can be said for me and Robert Bradford.
Oh man, look at see, you're only the second person, maybe third person ever did that. Lucas Giolito, Michael Kopach, and Robert Stock. But thank you. It makes me feel good. But this is it's all. I love our conversations that we've had, and I love your career. I love everything you're about. I love your social media. I love the way that you pitch, like all of it. I love your, I think that initially, way back when we first talked, I was getting into sort of books that you were reading, but there's way too much baseball to be talked about, right?
Hey, that's good. That means I'm doing something right.
No, it's true. So congratulations, you signed with the New York Mets as a minor league deal. Tell me how that came about. And that, obviously, we were just talking a year ago, and we'll get to this. It's crazy. I mean, crazy. It's such a cliche. What a difference a year makes. What a year, man. What a year. But first off, how did this come about?
The season ends, and my agent tells me on the first day that teams start reaching out to players, which is 5 days after their last game of the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
He says, such and such teams have reached out to me so far. We're not, they're not extending offers just yet. They want to see you pitch down in the Dominican first, and we'll go from there. And so I threw a couple of games down there and was clearly healthy and feeling good, and some offers go on the table. You send them well, this team offered me this. Can you match it or go better? And then, that's how it works.
Oh my goodness! But this is what a great accomplishment. Not only to get signed, but have multiple teams, not have to go through an entire, like you said. It sounds like you were ready to go through the Dominican League and say, hey, at the end of it, because obviously off season drags out more than ever now, particularly a lot of times for pitchers, who are signing minor league deals or whatever it is. But were you surprised by that? You're doing something right, is what I'm saying.
I wasn't surprised because, when I was with the Red Sox this past year, what a great organization for presenting the players with the information that they need to be able to evaluate their performance and know how they're doing. And I pitched a couple innings in the big leagues, which did not go well. But I had done so well in, my performance in the minor leagues, which was obviously, 99% of what I did last year, that I felt that teams would see that and think that there was some promise there. And that's what happened.
So I remember, when we talked after you signed the deal with the Red Sox, this time, let's go back to a year. Now we're going to do the year ago thing. You were pitching in the Mexican League. You had pitched in the Mexican League regular season, and then you were sticking around to pitch in the Mexican Winter League right around now, right? Correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And I don't know when it was. We had talked about this, you dropping down, becoming almost a completely different pitcher by dropping down almost below 3/4, I think. What was that right around now? When was that?
Yeah, so in the summer league, I had started to do it like a hybrid kind of versus right-handed hitters, I would drop lower versus left-handed hitters, I would be normally over the top. And then in the winter, in my second game, I gave up a home run to a lefty. And I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it all sidearm. This is no fun. So in the winter is when I actually began full-time sidearm. And then I took that into this last season with the Red Sox, and the whole year was every single pitch was sidearm, and we experimented with all sorts of different pitches, pitch shapes, size of the rubber, pitch sequences, just which pitches to use against which batters. The whole year was an experiment, and it was changing the entire time, and it still is continuing to experiment and get better. But I'm excited for next year to put it all together.
I mean, if you just said that phrase, the whole year was an experiment. Like we could do like a 10-hour podcast on that. Like especially this day and age, right? It's
Yeah.
this is what it's become. And I should say this is what it's become for the smart guys who understand there's tools and there's analytics and there's resources to allow you to try to find the best version of yourself at that point of your life. Am I phrasing that right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, basically, what they have nowadays is like your pitching stuff can get graded, and what's nice is in the past you used to have to say, "Hey, I'm going to try a new grip on a pitch. It's going to take me a month of throwing it versus hitters to see if I think it's going to be any good or not," because you can't just rely on one game. You could get unlucky, right? But now with the computers and stuff, you can say, well, other people have thrown pitches just like this one and they historically do pretty well, or maybe not. So it can give you a better idea of how to be effective sooner. And the best example of that are these guys that get to the major leagues in one season and they're already really good. Well, that's because they've been working on the things that will make them good based on computer grades and stuff since the moment they got signed. They were probably working on it even in college these days, right? You saw Trey Savage in the World Series be the poster boy.
Yeah,
for
I
this,
mean,
but,
there's that. I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, it's a great take, and there's another great conversation. Is that we know this that guys, Savage is sort of the guy on the billboard right now because of what he did in the World Series, but there was a lot of other guys ready to roll. Guy that Conley Early, Peyton Tolley, you had the guys from the Mets, all those guys from the Mets who came up and were going to be counted on if they made the postseason. Schlittler with the Yankees, this is a dynamic where everyone's like, well, there's an acceptance of the front office to do this just because maybe people think they just need to win now. But to your point, no, because they're more advanced because of exactly what you're saying, right?
yeah, they can be working on what makes a good major league pitch. It's pretty well known. There's still a couple of gray areas for guys that are ultra deceptive, but for the most part, it's just saying if you can get your ball to move like this, if you can throw it out of this slot from this side of the mound, it's going to work in the major leagues. So when we're in rookie ball, we don't need to be working on the things to get rookie ball hitters out. We're working on the things that get major league hitters out. And so when a player is displaying that they're throwing a bunch of strikes with major league caliber pitches, they can just breeze through from A ball up to the big leagues, up to the World Series in one season, and it makes complete sense because of all the information that we have these days.
So I want to go back to when you said all last year was an experiment. Because I love power ranking. I love a good power ranking. All right, I'm going to ask you top 3 things that you experimented last year that maybe like when you came into the year that you said that you weren't experimenting with. So is that a fair question?
Sure, yeah. So the first thing is just changeup variations. As a right-handed pitcher, you're always going to struggle against left-handed hitters for the most part, and that gets exacerbated the lower your arm slot is. Actually, the higher your arm slot, you will be more neutral, if not even better against lefties. And then the lower you drop it, it tips in favor of you're going to dominate righties and struggle against lefties. And so you need some sort of pitch to neutralize that. And a changeup is like the most obvious one. And so all year long, I was throwing different grips on changeups, different slots, different speeds. And ultimately, I settled on, I just can't do it. Just scrap the changeup overall.
Hey, at least you tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you try the kick change?
I can throw all the variations. I can get it to move well, but it's just really difficult for me to throw them in the strike zone, right? So you can go into a lab and you can create the world's nastiest pitch, but unless you can reliably throw it over and over again in the zone, it's it's useless to you.
Well, before you get to the top 2, it reminds me of we had Justin Willard on last week or a couple of weeks ago, who was obviously in the Red Sox organization and now the pitching coach for your New York Mets. And he talked about how the goal is not just to have the pitches, but to have a good enough pitches. Like, so if you're to have your third pitch be good enough to get back to your best pitch. So I think that a lot of people viewed it before as, well, you're just going to have something to show them differently. No, it has to be good enough to actually get back to your other pitch. So, so that's, I think, what you're talking about. So why have a bad changeup? Why have a changeup if it's not that pitch? It's going to be good enough to actually get back to your best pitch.
Right. And there's certain, when you plan on using the pitch, like early in the count, late in the count, behind in the count, ahead in the count, that all factors into it. And for me, this changeup was always going to be a like behind in the count, get to even in the count pitch. And for that, like when the batter is ahead in the count, they're so unlikely to chase pitches. They know that they're in the driver's seat. And so you have to be able to throw this pitch in the zone and have it be, successful. And whereas when you get to two strikes, the batters they're on the back seat, they're defensive, they might chase more often. And so how you throw a pitch in the zone changes according to the count and how you want to use the pitch and everything. So the changeup was just not working for me, even though on paper it should be great.
Well, again, good for you for trying. Good for you for acknowledging. What would be number two?
What side of the rubber I throw pitches from? Basically, I go as extreme as if I'm throwing on the first base side of the rubber, my toe, sorry, my toe is just touching the rubber. My heel is completely off the rubber towards the first base bag. And so throwing pitches from that side, and then I'll swap over to the third base side where my heel is just barely nicking the rubber, my toe being off towards the third base side. And by getting such extreme angles, you can just be more effective, basically. The reason that most pitchers don't mess around with such extreme angles is because it makes it more difficult potentially to throw a strike. But I've found that having the nastier pitch actually makes it easier to just throw the pitch in the middle of the zone, and what happens. Like, you don't need to be so fine with it because it's so deceptive that just choosing, so ultimately I settled on throwing against right-handed hitters. I throw exclusively from the third base side. And at the moment versus left-handed hitters, before two strikes, I stand on the first base side. And then with two strikes, I switched over to the third base side. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I haven't really been paying attention, but it seems like an outlier that you would switch with two strikes.
It's basically one of the things where against lefties, if your pitches can't be as dominant, just because of the way that physics works and righty lefty platoon splits, the more of a kitchen sink you can throw at them, the better. You can't just use the same tricks over and over again because they're not as effective. And so that's been my strategy so far. It's an ever shaping thing. I'm already thinking of, well, what if I throw out, I don't know. So it's, at the moment, that's the strategy, is swap back and forth depending on the count versus left-handed hitters.
All right. That's a good one. So what would be number one?
Number one, I would say, is just exactly how low my arm slot is.
Yeah. Before you go, one of the things that you had said in passing to me in spring training was that you had measured out at one point of having the best fastball velocity with the lowest arm slot of anybody and I always forget the guy's name who was pitching for Colorado.
Oh, Justin Lawrence.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. But yeah, so that's changed all, all year is like, well, how low do I want my slot to be? How high? Because you can get higher velocity the higher you raise it. And I found that by raising my arm slot a little bit, I could get better control and better velocity at the sacrifice of the tiniest bit of movement, and that was worth it. And so, earlier in the season, my velocity was, let's say, 92 to 94, touch 96, and then at the end, I was getting up to 98 because of raising the arms and just getting familiar with sidearm in general, right? So, the arm slot, side of the rubber, and
that's good ones.
Having a changeup, yeah.
Those are all good ones. You said, we're going to go to the social media. One of the things you said on X was Like there's a reason why a guy, what are you 36 now? 36?
Yeah, 36. Yeah.
36 that you get these chances because of the embracing the evolution. Teams see that. Teams see that you're not going to just be this is it and either like it or not. And because again, a lot of times guys get up at 30s and they're like, well, we don't like it. See you later. But you're
Right.
always evolving. And you said the latest thing was, I think, the knuckle curve, right? Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't work on that all year long. I actually only worked on it, for a week or two before my season came to an end. And I threw in one game, and in the Red Sox system, it graded phenomenally. They said this is one of the best curveballs in baseball. It's going to be great. But then my shoulder barked up for a bit, and they wound up releasing me, which is a whole nother thing because with how restrictive roster sizes are this year, if you're an old guy in the minor leagues in August, like good luck clinging to your spot because they just signed 30 new guys and they got to get rid of 30 guys. So that is what happened. But so that is the reason why I could get released in August, but then in October have multiple teams, or sorry, November have multiple teams again. We would love to sign you for this next year, right? But the knuckle curve is going to be that's
so you're. I mean, that's the
future.
thing when that's really interesting how you said that. Like, so you start doing it, it grades out elite as a curveball,
Yeah.
which that's all you need to say. If you had nothing else, you say, here's my resume, Major League Baseball teams. By the way, this pitch I just started throwing, we have scientific proof that it measures out elite, right?
Right. So there's basically there's one thing for it to measure out well, and then you say, okay, that's great that on paper it measures out well. What does it do when you actually throw it in the game? Can you throw it in the zone? Do the batters swing and miss? And so far, I've only thrown 9 of them ever, and the 7 of them were strikes, and 6 of those strikes were a swing and miss for a strikeout. So that's the paper is matching the results, so it's very promising.
Was that in the Dominican?
I threw like 3 or 4 of them in my very last start in AAA, and then like 5 of them.
Okay. But boy, I mean, that's exciting, and for the teams is exciting. I would imagine it's great. It's great. This is
one thing that I just missed to talk about was the idea of that when you're an older pitcher and you're trying to get a job in AAA, AAA does not have the world's like second best pitchers overall. It has some of them are the second best pitchers, and some of them are just young guys that might become good and might not. Whereas you have a bunch of older guys that play overseas, internationally, in Mexico that are like they've reached their ceiling, and their ceiling is better than the average AAA pitcher, but not good enough to be like an average major league pitcher. And so, but because teams believe that those pitchers are not going to improve anymore, they're just going to decline with age over time. They're never going to get a job back in affiliated baseball. And so, as a player that wants to be in affiliated baseball, you have to give a team a reason to believe that why you might be better in the future. Right. So that's
a great point. Right. When you, because last year, like that was, you jump back into, like you said, ultimately you jump back in the major leagues. Was it what last year, because things has changed so dramatically over the last few years, certainly, since, in your time and you were pitching in the Mexican League. So now you go from the Mexican League to the major leagues. That's like it in a nutshell. But for you last year, jumping back into AAA and the major leagues, was it what you expected at this point in time last year?
I certainly got caught up earlier than I thought I would have. I got caught up in very early April. It was earlier than I thought of, but I've always, and a team is only signing a person that is old like me, that has, a long history of some success, but a long history of a lot of not success. They're only signing you if it's very obvious that you have potential. And so I know that I have potential. And for me, it's mostly just the ability to throw it in the strike zone. And so it's just about, I need to put up enough of a resume of filling up the strike zone that the team says, okay, we believe it. Here's a shot to do to the major leagues. Right. So, And that's going to be the story for me this upcoming season, and the following season is just really good stuff. It just, you throw enough strikes that it's going to play in the major leagues.
Do you feel, and you're going to be biased about this, but do you feel that baseball is going to start looking at guys 35 and up, pitchers, I should say, differently because of all the things that we're talking about? I mean, the Red Sox just traded for Sonny Gray, 36.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, there's two ways to look at that acquisition. There's he's 36, and even though he's a 1-year contract, if you're going to say he's going to be the top of the rotation, walk side by side with Garrett Crochet, that's a risk because he's 36. You don't know when the cliff is coming. Yet, the same time, they'll say, well, look at his numbers, look at his under the hood numbers. They measure out with the Joe Ryans of the world in a different way, but they measure out, and we think he's going to keep doing it because guys are keeping doing it longer. So that's a long-winded way of me asking you, do you think that baseball will view guys 35 and up differently?
I think that you're just going to see what we already see, which is that contracts for old pitchers are 1 or 2 years tops, right? Teams are not going to be doling out, expecting pitchers in their late 30s to be able to ultimately maintain the velocity required to get major league hitters out. But you'll always see old pitchers get jobs somewhere because if they were effective in the year past, a team believes they'll be effective at least for one more season. And so the trade from the Cardinals to the Red Sox makes complete sense because the Red Sox ultimately they're trying to win very badly, and a team like the Cardinals just went into a rebuild essentially, and so they don't care so much about winning in 2026. They care about 27, 28, 29, so if the more that teams are, if you're in a rebuild, you're not interested in old guys because they're going to be too old when you're actually trying to win. But if you're winning, if you're very interested in winning in the very next season, old guys are great. You saw in like 2019 when the Nationals won, they had the oldest roster in baseball. And then the next year they were a garbage. They didn't,
Yeah, but look at, but even Robert, even look at the Blue Jays. Like, it's okay. It's like, okay, if you can get to the finish line and get these guys, the Dodgers are an outlier because they have a lot of luxury items.
Right.
But the Blue Jays had, you had Bassett, you had Scherzer, you had
Springer.
Springer. Yeah, you had, and I don't think it's a coincidence, honestly, that the 30-something-year-old clubhouses like win. Like,
right.
I don't. I think that, and this is maybe a different conversation, but there is that element of these guys being secure in themselves, these guys knowing what it takes. He's got all the cliches that comes to older guys. But all I know is this. I had the privilege of going in these clubhouses, and the vibe and the performance and the results, these were the ones that were winning.
Right.
So I don't know.
No, yeah, baseball is going to be set up for, like, they always do whatever they think is going to help them win. They don't care as much as other people think that baseball teams are, they're all about the analytics. They don't care about these other things. Like, no. If you can show them something that's going to help them win baseball games, they're going to sign up for it, right? And so, so long as old players continue to contribute, they're going to have jobs.
So that leads me something I skipped over that I should ask you before when we talked about you signing. Why the Mets?
The Mets were able to, give me like the best contract of any of the other teams, or at least match it. And I like their setup. I thought that they have some opportunity for me, and it's nice that, for instance, they just got Justin Willard as their major league pitching coach, who was who I worked closely with in Worcester last year. So that's
do you
nice
think?
familiarity.
I mean, obviously, you have to have more than one guy going to bat for you. But did that help? Having Justin there?
Yeah, definitely. I worked with him a lot last year in Worcester, and I like him, and I hope that at some point that the reason the Mets reached out to me might have been influenced by him telling them to sign me. I don't know.
No, I mean, I would imagine it does. I'm going to turn the table a little bit because people with the Mets desperately want to know everything about everything. So what can you tell? Like you said, you worked with Justin a lot last year. What can you tell Mets people about Justin Willard?
Just that he's a really knowledgeable guy. The way that baseball is played in 2025 and 20, and will be from here on out is you have to know so much information and be able to parse through all this data and stats. And the reason you have to do that is because if you don't, you're behind the eight ball. No matter how much like an old school player that was really good 2 decades ago might stress that they know all the basics. Like the game has complained, or sorry, not complained. The game has changed completely, and Justin is a guy that understands all the new school stuff, but there's still value. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater in old school stuff, and he can blend both of those things. The knowledge of the fundamentals that have always existed in the game for 100 years with everything that's new and changing, and he's a great guy to
isn't that the sort of the great white whale when it comes to finding coaches? It's like is finding those people where because this goes back to when you were in elementary school or whatever. Moneyball came out. Moneyball comes out, everyone immediately takes sides, scouts versus stats. And
Right.
now, we're sitting here more than 20 years later, and we're doing the same thing. Oh, well, you got to have the old school pitching coach. No, you got to have the analytical pitching coach. Like, and you know this better than anyone because you're in the middle of it. The challenge is finding the people, even the people who are genuinely understanding that you need both, and not the people who are saying that they understand both, but not really understanding they need both. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's basically, the best coaches are going to be able to have all the information at their fingertips, and that's all the new information, all the old information, and then being able to relay that to your pitchers, who, especially in the major league level, they're under immense pressure. They're on such a big stage, they're getting paid so much money, and a lot of times they might be more resistant to want to change something because this is what they've done for 10 years and it's working, right? And so. Being able to work with major league pitchers is entirely different than working with minor league pitchers. And so, this will be Justin's first year, but I'm very confident that he'll be able
Why?
to do it.
Why is that? Because the major league pitchers have had enough success; they sort of know who they are, and obviously everyone's different. I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but is it because it's like, hey, listen, there's going to be tweaks, but there's not going to be. We're not going to break you down and build you back up.
Exactly. In the minor leagues, a coach can come to you and say, "Hey, we need to improve this thing," and you can believe that you've got some leeway to have some failure in the game, and they're still going to think that you're doing a good job. Whereas there's no game that you can pitch in the major leagues where it's okay that you did poorly because you were working on something.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And you also, it must have been interesting in AAA because one of the things that they did last year in Western Red Sox, and also, and the example that I always give is a Ryan Brazier example with the Dodgers, where he was DFA'd. He's like, "We're going to send you to Arizona 10 days. We're going to teach you a cutter. And by the way, now you're going to come back and have a 1 ERA." But what a lot of times you see, like they trade for Kyle Harrison, for instance. Hey, we're not just going to throw you out there. We're going to take this time to sort of see what we can find in there. Am I overstating that? You had the front row seat for, I mentioned Harrison, but other guys too.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of times organizations are getting specific players based on an improvement they believe that they can enact that will help this guy that maybe someone wasn't stressing this improvement. And so, just like we were talking about how you don't need as much game experience these days because you have all of this data telling you if you can just achieve this pitch shape and throw it in the zone, like it's going to be good. It doesn't have to be done in the game for 2 months to do it. And so you get a new player and you want him to work on something. Well, you can work on it without being in the game first. So you remove that stress of fans and your stats and everything. And so you can see why it's helpful for players to sit out for a bit.
So as you're saying this, I'm feeling like Rich Hill is going to call me at any point and basically said my shivers just went down my spine because you said like you don't need to have that game experience. And so obviously the counter to that would be, well, you don't know how they're going to act with a third deck. And that's I guess the risk that you take. that's sort of the personality model that you've shaped from drafting the guy, from seeing the guy, being around the guy. Trey Savage, you don't know how this guy's going to act in the World Series. I don't know. But, there's that element of it too. I mean, I don't know if you can quantify that. That's sort of, maybe you can, I don't know.
Well, basically, you can't. The only place that has a third deck is the major leagues, right?
Yeah.
So you can't, like, if you're playing in the complex league or you're playing in AAA, it's not that different, because you know that every single game, it doesn't really matter. If you win or you lose in any minor league level for a specific game, it's not as important as the players improved overall, right? Whereas in the major leagues, if you walk the bases loaded and then get the world's luckiest triple play, the coach is still happy. But that's not the case in the minor leagues, right? So major league experience and minor league experience are completely different things, in my opinion.
So I should have looked this up. When was before last year? When was the previous time you had been in the majors?
2021.
2021. When you went into the game last year, did it feel like you remembered?
Yeah. I mean, well, it was a lot colder. It was in Boston in April, but
but it's pitching, right? I mean, it's like it's you've done it before, you've pitched before, you know what pitching in the major leagues is all about. So I just didn't know if sometimes time passes and like, oh, I remember what, to your point, I remember what it's like. Well, they don't even have a third deck at Fenway, but I remember what it's like to pitch in a third deck. I remember this.
Yeah, like I would say that when you're actually stepping on the mound and getting the sign, like your vision hones into, you, the batter, the catcher, the umpire, whatever.
Clear mechanism.
Yeah, that's not even at least in my opinion, you don't even have to tell yourself that. It happens because you're focusing on the thing that matters, which is where you're throwing the ball. But the biggest difference, though, is that once the ball is hit and you hear the roar of the crowd, like that is very different.
Yeah.
So,
dude, that's a great perspective. That's what I'm talking about. Like, you don't even. I remember somebody once said they cheer for foul balls and they don't do that in the minors.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So just like how loud the crowd gets when the ball is in play. You already made your pitch. You can't really control much else. So potentially, it's can you recover your heart rate like in between the play to then step it back up on the mound? Well, that would be a challenge.
Along those lines, it's funny because we mentioned the clear the mechanism thing, which is obviously from For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner. And when I was sitting down with Dylan Cease this year, I forget how it came up, but he had the great point. Like, can you imagine like there was a pitch clock? Nobody ever thought of this. Like, you could not make that movie now if there was a pitch clock.
Right. Oh. One scene that always stands out to me for that movie that is funny is two things. Is when like he cuts his finger and he tells his girlfriend that the doctor is the most important person to him and not her. It's like, well, can you fix his finger? Like, of course, the most important person is the doctor. And then secondly, the guy's bleeding out. He's going to die. Fix his finger. Then secondly is John C. Reilly wearing his team hat in the team hotel. Always cracks me up like you're wearing your baseball hat.
Oh, my goodness. Robert, like one of the things I love talking about is baseball movies. And you mentioned John C. Reilly. He's done a lot of congratulations, John C. Reilly. You've done a lot of great things. Been a lot of great roles. Numerous roles.
Of course.
But I love, and we go back to power ranking. I love power ranking the worst catchers in baseball movies. There's been John C. Reilly would honestly be up there. And it's not only because he wears his hat in the team hotel. It's just because, the athletic ability wasn't. I'm going to give you, I don't know if you have one that jumps to mind. I'm going to give you the all-timer, which was, this is before your time, but you can Google it. John Candy in Brewster's Millions.
Okay.
Richard Pryor was this pitcher. You know John Candy, who John Candy is.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so imagine John Candy. Like, personality off the field, great. Awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Like squatting back behind the plate for 9 innings for 160. Yeah.
Mobility, yeah. But this is one thing, I think, a weak spot where for Hollywood casting it's not easy. It's not easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy in Major League, Tom Berenger, like that was okay. That was representative, I guess. He could. I mean, he had no knees, but
Right.
So
No,
be it.
I'd have to go back and look at it because I don't remember being struck by John C. Riley being just like so like unfit for the role of catcher, other than just I just remember the hat. Like we would get there's kangaroo court in baseball locker rooms is where you bring up all the infractions your teammates have done all week long, and that would be like a maximum fine for wearing your.
Have you ever
Tigers
seen
hat.
anybody do that? Any player do that? Whereas like
In-
hat.
Yeah, especially like in the minor leagues when guys just they're very proud they just got signed by their team and they want other people to know that they're now a member of this organization, and you get fined for that.
It's like going to the mall. Hey, it's like going to the mall. Hey, everybody, gather around. I'm famous. All right. So there's two last things I would like to talk to you about. One is ABS. The other is the strikes. I guess they sort of morph together. But that social media conversation you had with Kurt Schilling about the strike zone, which is like I find really interesting, and I think that you put it very well. Say, can't we have a conversation about this? And then ultimately, like, all right, whatever. I'm again paraphrasing, but if we can't have a conversation about it, then I give up. So let's start there. Let's start with the strike zone. I don't disagree with you at all. I've had great baseball conversations with Kurt. I covered Kurt. I actually was Kurt's boss when we hired him as a blogger for WEI.com. I love talking baseball with him, but I think that you were dead on about the strike zone, how the strike zone has changed, and it's interesting because there's so much we can look back at the '90s, even the 2000s, of like, oh well, why was this way? Now we can measure all of it. But when you were talking about how different, take me through exactly what that conversation, the impetus for the conversation, and what you took out of that conversation.
Yeah, well, the impetus is just that the way that baseball was played 20, 30 years ago is so different than it is today. And part of that is just because the difference in the strike zone. As the strike zones were shown on TV, umpires felt more pressure to start calling pitches that were actually over the plate and not off the plate. And that forced pitchers to throw more hittable pitches. And in doing so, that forced pitchers to need to throw faster and better pitches because they actually had to throw it into the zone. Whereas before, if your skill wasn't throwing 100 miles an hour, but it was throwing it, perfectly 4 inches off the plate, right where the catcher set up, that was just as valuable. And when you remove that value, the pitchers had to, okay, it's not as important that we're command artists. We have to be velocity artists instead. And, but if old school pitchers don't realize the strike zone has changed, then they can't understand why pitchers would need to throw so fast anymore, because can't you just do what I did? And the catcher sets up 6 inches off the plate, hits my glove, and the umpire, sends him packing. Like that used to be the case. You watch these old games and people will argue with me online, like, well, no, look on the screen, you can see that the ball actually is near the plate. It's like the guy, look at the catcher, look at where he set up. You're telling me that this pitch somehow nicked home plate, but then by the time it got to the catcher, like 2 feet behind it, it suddenly transported 1 foot off the plate. Like that's not how it works.
It's very enjoyable to watch like that kind of conversation. But for you, do you like that conversation? Like know you like this conversation, but you know how social media is. This is why it's sort of like, I'm like, if I'm going to go back at someone, I'm like, okay,
Right.
dig in. It's going to take a while. So do you like that?
I would say I don't like having the conversation, but I feel the need to push back when these, respected huge figures of the game basically mislead. I don't care that they mislead people from the same generation, but if you're a younger kid watching, like you got to have someone standing up for the fact that this is the way baseball used to be, and it's very different now, and just draw your attention to it.
Then do you have people DMing you? Because again, overall, it's an interesting conversation. That's why it got going.
Right.
Did you have people contacting you and said, "Hey, you're dead on," or "Hey, I'm on the other side"?
Most people agree with me. Of course, the way that any social media thing works is it's an echo chamber. So of course, people who see my tweet are going to be more inclined to believe what I have to say, and vice versa if you see someone else's tweet. So I mostly see people agree with me, but I understand that's probably because of the algorithm more than facts or whatever.
Tricky facts.
Yeah.
Well, that leads us to like the ABS thing. You like it, right?
Yeah. So in 2023, I was in AAA with the Brewers, and that was when they were experimenting with uh, the first 3 games of the week would be completely automated, and the next 3 games would do the challenge system. And it became quickly apparent to everybody that the completely automated games were just so boring. It just felt like you had sucked a part of the game out by having the strike zone, which is one of the most fundamental parts of the game, be completely automated, and that the challenge system requires you to kind of like put something behind your bet, like you think it was a strike, so you have to sit here and be confident about it, right? And that's so much more interesting.
It is. The first time I got a chance to see it was last spring training, and I think that a lot of people who, let's be honest, I think the 75% of Major League Baseball fans probably haven't seen it. They just haven't. They don't know what it's about. Because I've heard people say, "Oh, I heard it's going to be the strike zone is going to be run by robots now." Like, well, no, not really.
Yeah.
But one of the things is the drama of it, like the drama of it, because they put they put actually what the umpires are seeing up on the jumbotron, and you're like, oh, and then it's like, oh,
Right.
it just meant. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, as a pitcher, that like when I'm not pitching, I just sit on the bench and watch the game, and and hitters constantly come in bitching and moaning about the strike zone, and with this ABS, it reduces that like 99%, because it's like, firstly, they realize that they're wrong all the time about what's a strike and what's a ball, and secondly, they have something they can do about it. Like if you really thought it was that bad of a call, you didn't challenge it. Why not? Because you weren't really sure, right? So it couldn't have been that bad of a call if you weren't really sure. And so people are going to realize how good umpires are, but umpires still make terrible mistakes sometimes, and so at least the batters and pitchers have a recourse for that.
Were pitchers like, because I know a lot of teams they're saying no, pitchers can't challenge. We don't know because the pitchers are too emotional. Was that the case usually?
It's not that they're too emotional; it's that they're too far away.
Okay.
They're 60 feet away, 50 something feet, and their heads kind of moving around while they throw it, whereas the catcher is sitting there completely solid, unmoving, right at the catcher is closer than the umpire to the strike zone, and
right.
So they're just so much more reliable. And just like you're saying, they have much less skin in the game of the result of the pitch. So the catcher is the best one to challenge, and I think that we'll see that both hitters and pitchers get skewed or get by what they would like the results to be rather than what they actually think that they are.
But the catchers are the most grounded. No,
Yes.
no pun intended. But yeah. So do you feel the other thing people say? Well, is it actually accurate? That was, and maybe in the time that you've seen it, maybe there's been an evolution of its accuracy. Do you think it's accurate?
I have never seen a call that was like clearly missed. I've never seen it be like, oh, it said it was outside, but it was actually in the dirt or something like that, right? So that's first, it's never been any egregious mistakes, like ever. And then so secondly, if it's not accurate, like how do we know what is, right? When we look at like slow-mo on TV, it lines up pretty much to where we think that pitch is. So I think that it's more accurate than anything else. How are we going to judge if it's a strike or not? And I think in AAA and major leagues, they have like 12 cameras that converge to tell you where this pitch was, right? So
yeah, so science would suggest it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Did you not that you're playing the WBC, but I like asking guys, would you have like the 6 degrees of separation of any country that you could play the WBC for?
Yeah, I actually my grandpa is Jewish, and when I was younger I went to Hebrew school, so I played in the WBC for Team Israel last time, so I'm planning on doing it again.
Sorry, I told you you're going to do it again.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it should be fun. It's
Boy, I am going to edit out that part where I I knew that I was so focused on like, oh, now you're with the Mets, you're gonna make the team and everything else, but so you're gonna play again. So what I asked Daniel Bard this the other day because he pitched for Team USA about ramping up.
Mhm.
For you, how does that look like? What's that? Is that any different at all, or?
Will change nothing, especially for me as a minor league player that is, fighting tooth and nail to make this team sooner rather than later, right? I show up to spring training as ready as can be, and the WBC isn't going to change anything about that because I'm going to be ready regardless.
What it was, it must have been an awesome experience before, was it?
Yeah, it's full of. Firstly, it's fun to play games that mean something more than spring training games. It's fun for every single player. You're playing on a team of people who share some sort of bond. For Team Israel, that's your like relation to religion, but for every other team, it's some sort of history of where you're from and stuff like that. So
Any new guys for Team Israel?
I have no idea. I'm going to show up and
You
I'm going to
show
see
up.
some new faces and be like, "Hey, nice to meet you."
You guys have the best gear too. Like it's like I forget what it was. What was it? What was it?
Uh, well, I think Ian Kinsler, who managed the team last year, I
Yeah.
think it's his company like makes the jerseys.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's awesome. I love the yeah, I love it. I love people I think have to start talking about it more for a lot of different reasons. But I remember now, sorry, I remember you played last time and and I think it's gonna be awesome. And I do think that for guys are better at getting ready for it, teams are better at getting their head around it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And that all because of all of that, that you can be in that position and say, all right, I can still make the team and still play in the WBC. I know that you know
Um,
all this, but so
uh, like especially for guys that are like minor leaguers trying to make or just trying to have a good impression for the major league team, it's hard to get enough innings for everybody. And so the fact that you can ship these guys out to go play WBC games means that you can continue to evaluate them and share more innings across your whole, 70 player spring training camp. So it's good in that regard for teams too.
that's a great way to look at it too. I haven't heard that. All right, well, we solved all the world's problems. You solved most of the world's problems. I didn't do much. But I really listen, like honestly, like I always enjoy our conversations and I look forward to uh, I'm gonna keep asking you questions because you always have interesting answers. So I appreciate it, man.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is always a fun conversation. I can't wait to come on again.